by putting the brakes on an administration initiative aimed to round up illegal migrants in major cities across the country. The Washington Post reporting, in a move that has become a hallmark of his chaotic presidency, he reversed the plan in a tweet Saturday, mere hours before the raids were to begin. NBC's Mike Vaquera is at the White House for us. He joins us now. And Mike, I mentioned that broader context, seeing this over and over again, whether it's what we learned about the conversation in the Situation Room on Thursday night, whether it's the tariffs that the president threatened to put in place on Mexico. Help us understand what went into this decision. Again, the president taking it right down to the wire.
Well, you know, it's a great question, David, and that clip that you just played of the president, that was in the White House driveway. He was getting ready to go to Camp David aboard Marine One yesterday. That was 11 o'clock, talking as if the raids were going forward. By 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, 4 hours later, comes the tweet from Camp David. The raids that were on at 11 were off at 3 o'clock. And I think it's instructive, you talk about sort of a microcosm of the Trump presidency, to look at how this all unfolded over the course of the last several days. On Monday night, the president tweeting out that millions of people, the process to deport millions of people was going to start, and that this operation would be underway. Naturally, that set off a great thirst for details from the press, immigration advocates, and people across the country. Really, they wanted to know the details. Administration officials on background were providing those details, and then the justification for canceling the raids. Too many details out there in the public. So the messaging, the operational security was compromised, and that's part of what brought us to this point. Many of those details, some 2,000 people are going to be deported at 10 cities around the country. It was supposed to start today, this very day. And ironically, and finally, David, the president tweeting just about an hour ago saying 2 weeks for Democrats to come together with Republicans and come up with a plan, or in fact, big deportation begins. You see that tweet right there. So once again, he's telegraphing his plans. Operational security could be jeopardized if he indeed follows through with this threat again, David.
Philip Bump, if we were to have the Art of the Deal version 2, this could be a chapter. This establishment of a deadline, self-imposition of a deadline, and then getting almost to it and stepping back.
Yes. I mean, look, this is, I have 1,000 things to say about it. But yeah, I mean, we've seen President Trump do this repeatedly. I mean, even the 2 weeks thing. I mean, he says 2 weeks all the time. Something's coming in 2 weeks.
In Iran.
Yeah, I mean, literally, there's a piece on Bloomberg today that talks about how many times he said 2 weeks. Yeah. The issue is, as the former DHS head, Jay Johnson, said on your show, the issue is that by indicating that you're going to do these things, that obviously gives people a heads up. But it's important to note, too, that announcing the raids is in itself part of the tactic, right? Yeah. So on Jeanine Pirro's show on Fox News yesterday, the acting head of DHS essentially said, yes, we see this as a deterrent. We want people to think that this is going to happen. Of course, they want to actually do it, but we want people to think this is going to happen because we don't want people coming to the country in the first place. So this is, in the same way that family separation was itself meant as a deterrent, this also is meant as a deterrent, and it is leveraging fear within a community of people who are here illegally to try and gain political points to some extent. And I think it's important to remember, two things about these proposed rates. The first is that the vast majority of the population of undocumented immigrants in the United States lives in big cities. They live in places like New York and Los Angeles, but also that most of the people who are now being added to that population of immigrants who are in the country illegally are not people from Mexico. They're mostly Asian at this point in time, and they're mostly visa will come on a legitimate visa and then overstay their visa. So it is not the case that when he talks about these deportations, what he's talking about is not the sort of picture he presented in June 2015. It is instead a much more nuanced, much more complex picture, and all of these people are being affected by these sorts of threats.
And the acting head of ICE, speaking to NPR, talking to John Burnett, a reporter for NPR, saying, my duty is not to look at the political optics or the will of the American people. That is for the politicians to decide. To your point about the messaging here that we're seeing from the administration. Kevin, we have this 2-week interregnum now. It's a postponement, much along the way that the tariffs are being postponed for 90 days. What can possibly happen during this period of time? Congress is going on recess for July 4th in just a few days.
They're always on recess. My God, they never work. But look, I think the bottom line is that Republicans and Democrats right now, like virtually round the clock, are trying to get to some type of deal to extend funding to aid these detention centers and facilities along the border for these migrant children. And look, I mean, Republicans and Democratic aides, both inside the administration and staffers up down on Capitol Hill, are saying that the rhetoric coming from the likes of President Trump and AOC is not helping this matter whatsoever. I do want to pick on a point that you made, because it is completely in line with what I'm hearing from sources as well. This is part of the strategy. The messaging is part of the strategy. It's the deterrent. And it's not just for folks here in the U.S., but also folks who are considering coming, and that they're telegraphing that to those folks who are considering coming into the United States, that this is not, in this administration, going to be acceptable.
Mr. Greer, I'm going to play a little bit more from my interview with Jeh Johnson, the former Homeland Security Secretary. We'll pick it up right after we play this clip.
You can't be deported unless there's been an order of deportation from an immigration judge after you have exhausted your remedies. If you have an asylum application pending, that proceeding has run its course. Any appeals you might have